Hello and welcome to our webinar about working with assigning materials in my nursing lab. So today we're going to take a look at how to assign and create assignments, activities, how to work with learning aids, how to look at grading, things you could do to reduce the risk of students cheating in your course, how to personalize settings for your students, where students go to work, and more. So let's take a look at assignments. Now, my nursing lab comes preloaded with a lot of material. If you attended our first webinar, you would have learned that we can go to Instructor Tools, Activities and Assessments Manager, and we can quickly access all the materials that are already loaded in our course. The same thing applies for different sections in the course. So these tabs across the top may have different names depending upon which course you're working with, but each of these will contain materials that you can look at. So let's take a look first of all at the existing materials in your course. So you're going to go to this particular course, and you can see here that many of these are already assigned. The reason I know that is I see a little green check mark in the assigned column. I can also quickly go here and unassign if I don't want to use a particular assignment, or I can go ahead and assign if something's not there and I want to make sure students will see that. Okay, so I can scroll through and see what materials are already created for me. Again, I have several categories. I can use these drop-down menus to go explore to see what information is available. I can also search by lessons. So I have modules and lessons here. And then we have different categories. This particular course that we're looking at has the fundamentals. It also has great case studies and then test banks and practice tests for you to use. You may have noticed when we went to our activities and assessments page that there's also the opportunity to create homework quizzes and tests from scratch. So not only could you choose to edit one of these assignments, you can easily copy and edit that with the drop-down menus to the right, but we could also start from scratch. So we're going to go ahead here and just take a look. We're going to create a demo assignment. Now, one of the things you could do is even personalize this assignment based upon, for example, having students do a diagnostic test first. So we could choose, we could say, well, if you do this pre-test first, you may not need to do as much of this homework. That's a really nice option to kind of reduce the load of assignments for your students. For now, we're just going to skip over that, but you can always learn more about that later. We're going to go in here and choose some materials for students to look at. Now, notice that I can choose questions. I can also choose media. We're going to start off by choosing questions. So we're going to pretend that we're looking at nursing role and healthcare delivery. And so I can search by outcome, and I can come in here and choose some questions. Put some questions in here. Again, these are already questions that are used in the pre-built assignments as well, but I'm building my own. And again, I'm going to go in here and choose some of these. At any given time, I can click on this and take a larger look at it and say, yes, I'd like to add that to my assignment instead of just looking at the little thumbprint. Compare frameworks of care. I'm going to add those to my assignment as well. Now I have 10 questions. I can also choose to add media. So I can add existing media that's available in my course. So you'll notice that I can go in and choose by lessons. So this particular one has a nursing foundations lesson. I could choose to add that media directly to my assignment. I can click sort to put that right at the top of the assignment. So I could have a homework assignment where students first watch the video and then complete the questions. I could also add my own media. This is a really nice tool if you've already made a lecture video for your class. You can go in here and add that. You could also perhaps load a PDF, a handout you want your students to have, maybe a PowerPoint you want them to access. Maybe there's an animation in the book. Maybe there's also some nice website that you want them to look at. So you can add media to your assignment. Do keep in mind that whatever you add to your assignment, you want that to be accessible to all of your students, particularly if you're looking at your course becoming approved by something like Quality Matters. You want to keep accessibility in mind. This is a great way to add external media to your course. Once you've made those selections, then you can go to your settings page and you can determine due date. You can determine whether you're going to allow late work. You can determine whether there are prerequisites. You might want to limit the number of times students can work each question. You might want them to watch the media before they do the question. You can change some of these assignments settings. Now, you might say, well, Do I have some other controls? For example, what else can I do with my assignments? You'll notice there's this hyperlinked view assignment details above the questions you've chosen. We're going to go ahead and click that momentarily here. Take a look at what's contained here. So on this particular page, we can choose, for example, what assignment tools students are going to have as learning aids. So, oops, let's click that. So we're going to click here and we can take a look. Oh, this one just has Ask My Instructor or an instructor tip. Some of yours are going to have other tools such as watch a video or help me solve and work through these questions. I can also limit the number of times students get a try within the question. In other words, they would typically have, for example, 3 attempts to get a multiple choice question correct. Maybe I only want to make that 2. I can require a student to show me work. Perhaps it's a computation question or I want them to do some explanation. I can also change the point value for questions. Now, if I go ahead and save and assign this, I can take a look at class settings. The other thing I can do is also go in and take a look at batch changing class settings. So for example, maybe I want to say that all of my tests and quizzes can tolerate late work and have a grade penalty. So for example, I want to allow late work and I'm going to give it a 25% penalty. Or I could say per day, I could give them 10% off their score. I could also choose to do points. This will be automatically applied then to all of the quizzes or tests or homework, whatever I've chosen, rather than me having to do this assignment by assignment. Really, really nice tool. So again, that saves us time and energy. We can just go back and click batch change class settings. Now you might say, well, I don't need to do something for the entire class, but I have some students who need special accommodations, particularly students that might need extended testing time. So you can customize assignment settings per student. So we're going to go ahead and click there. First thing we would do would be to add the student that it applies to. So we're going to go ahead and do that. So we would put that student's name in there, and then we would choose the category. And so for example, here for Diane, we're going to choose what assignments this is going to apply to. I'm going to choose all the pre and post tests because Diane needs time and a half. So I can come in here, and if my class, for example, had 60 minutes, I can go in here and say, give Diane 90 minutes. Please show the time that's remaining. I'm going to choose all of those tests. I'm going to apply that to all of them. Maybe I want to allow late work for her as well, so I can choose that submission here. And then once I would choose that, I could go ahead and click Save Settings. I can do this for the entire batch at one time. I can do this for more than one student. So if I have 4 or 5 students who need testing time, I can go ahead and do that at one time. So that's a time saver, really nice tool for faculty. Now you might say, well, that's great. Those are some settings for, batch changing class settings or student settings. What about doing things that keep students from cheating? Well, one of the things that you'll find is that many of the questions are algorithmic. We also recommend if you're making a test or quiz that you can pool questions together. So if you're creating a test or quiz and you're going to allow students to take that quiz more than one time, you can pool questions together. So for example, maybe I'm going to put these 2 together, but I'm going to pool them. What that means is if the student takes it the first time, they're going to get the first question, the second time they get the second question. So they could be similar, but not the same, changes things up a little bit. So students are less likely to see the same question twice or seeing the same type of question twice. There are other things you can do too when you're choosing settings, whether it's on an individual test or on batch changing for all of them. You can come in here and you can say, let's scramble the question order for each student. Give them these questions in different orders so it's more difficult for them to cheat off of each other. You could also opt when you're doing this to allow them to review feedback and to have study tools when they're reviewing so that they're less likely to be asking you a lot of questions about what they got wrong. But again, pooling is a really nice way to scrambling to make it a little harder for students to kind of game the system. Now we've taken a look at settings for the class, settings for students, how to create assignments, how to assign. One of the other things you can do is set prerequisites. This course comes with preloaded prereqs, but maybe you want to come in here and modify some of them. Maybe you want to change the minimum score. Maybe you want to change the number of attempts. So you can come onto the prerequisites page and change those settings. You can also manage in these particular courses the Learning Path Manager. This is not a tool that's available in every MyLab course, but in these particular courses it is. By default, mastery is set at 80%. If they achieve mastery score in a topic assessment, meaning they score at 80% or better, students can earn some credit and kind of test out of some work, if you will. So you can change that particular percentage cutoff if you'd like. You can also modify the order that lessons come in simply by clicking and dragging them to a different order in modules. So if we come here, we click reorder, then we can come here and move some modules around. Maybe we want the physiological aspects before we talk about assessing health status. Okay. Now, the other part of setting up assignments, of course, is going to your grade book and choosing just how things will be weighted. So we're going to go to the grade book and we're going to click change weights. In the change weights page, we can choose to do assignment weighting. A lot of faculty like category weighting. So for example, you may have 10% of the students' homework, 10% of their grade is from homework, 15% from quizzes, maybe tests are 70%, and maybe they have a category that's known as discussions, and that's 5%. Now you can also choose, if you've noticed here, you could also choose to add other categories to this page. So you can choose to go through here and change these, add more than one category, balance this out however you want. So again, if I chose to have, for example, some multiple categories, I could have discussions, I could have project grades, I could have group assignments, you know, maybe some case studies your students are completing, and you can add multiple categories and then click Save. So I'm going to go ahead when I'm done with these settings and click Save before I do anything else, because I want to make sure I don't lose anything I've just done. The other thing that I can do too, if there are materials that I want my students to be able to practice, but I don't want them to count in the overall grade, I can click to omit results. So you'll see when we do that, they become grayed out. That means they are still assigned. Students will see them, students will need to do them, but the grade will not count for that particular assignment. It won't affect their overall score. You can also change the point value here so that you can change the weight of overall score. Typically, tests, of course, are worth more than a homework assignment, but you can manipulate the scores on this page according to the criteria that you're looking for. Again, you can search also by types of assignments. You can also search by the particular sections here: nursing foundations, lifespan, health status, or physiological aspects of nursing. And then keep in mind, we also have a category here for case studies, and then test banks and practice tests. So again, I can go through here and take a look at how things are, you know, what they're worth, how things are weighted. Okay. So once you've created all this, where are students going to go to work? Again, if you recall from the first webinar, if you attended that, students are going to access their assignments by clicking here on the home page. They're going to click on the next activity on their learning path. They will also be able to see when things are due to the right-hand side. They can also click on the menu here on the left-hand side and then see their learning path and completed work. That is how they're going to access and track their progress. So again, they will click on the learning path. They can access the next assignment, continue to work through these modules, track things as they go through, and review their results. So that's it. We've taken a look at creating assignments and assigning things, configuring our learning aids, looking at grading schema, trying to doing some things to reduce the risk of students cheating, showing you where they go in the product to take their tests, and some practices for assessment. So thank you so much for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you again in another webinar about My Nursing Lab. Have a great day.